I stepped into my bedroom and froze. The late afternoon sun slanted through the curtains, painting long stripes across the carpet. And there she was, my younger sister Olivia, turning slowly before my mirror, the ivory satin of my after-party wedding dress clinging to her frame as if it had been designed for her. In her ears shimmered my grandmother's sapphire earrings, heirlooms promised to me since childhood. My chest tightened. Every breath scraped like sandpaper. "What are you doing with my dress?" My voice came out low, but sharp enough to cut. Olivia didn't flinch. Her lips curled into a smile that carried no guilt. "It looks better on me." Mom agrees. The air shifted. Footsteps creaked behind me. My parents hovered in the doorway, their faces a mixture of discomfort and quiet approval. "Take it off," I said, steady now, "or there won't be a wedding." Before I tell you how far my family pushed me and how I pushed back, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll want to hear the rest. I wish I could tell you that moment in my bedroom was the first time my sister tried to take something that belonged to me. It wasn't. It was simply the latest, the boldest, and maybe the cruelest. To really understand why my voice didn't shake when I told Olivia to take off my dress, you need to know the pattern, the years of small cuts that taught me what silence costs. I grew up in Kansas City in a 2-story brick house that always smelled faintly of lemon polish and my mother's perfume. From the outside, we looked like a perfect family: dad in his collared shirts, mom always hosting book club, 2 daughters with matching blonde braids on the front porch. But behind the lace curtains, there was an unspoken hierarchy. Olivia, the younger one, the one with the dimpled smile, was the sun. I was expected to orbit quietly around her light. I still remember prom night my senior year. I had saved babysitting money for months to buy silver heels that made me feel for once like I belonged in my own skin. I laid them out carefully on my bed, ready to slip into them just before my date arrived. When I came back from curling my hair, the shoes were gone. Olivia was downstairs laughing as flashbulbs popped. She wore them with her red dress, the straps biting into her feet because they weren't her size. By the end of the night, one heel was snapped. When I asked about it, Mom's voice was dismissive. "They're just shoes, Luna. Your sister needed them." Be gracious, it didn't end with shoes. Freshman year of college, I splurged on a leather tote, a vintage Coach bag I found at a thrift store in pristine condition. It was the first thing I bought that made me feel like a woman building her future. Olivia borrowed it one weekend. When she returned it, the lining was caked with foundation stains, the handles sticky from spilled latte. "Relax," she said, rolling her eyes. "It's not like it's Chanel." Dad backed her up. "She didn't mean to. Don't make a big deal." Every "don't make a big deal" was another stone laid into a wall I learned to build inside myself. I stacked silence on silence, resentment pressed into the mortar, until one day the wall cracked. That crack came the winter before I got engaged. I had styled an outfit for a political client, Senator Graham's daughter, something that could have made my career. It was a fitted wool jacket with hand-stitched seams, a custom piece borrowed from a designer who trusted me. Olivia borrowed it just for an hour. She came back with a splash of red wine blooming across the fabric like a wound. My boss's voice was sharp cold. "This is strike one, Luna." And again my parents rushed to defend her. "Accidents happen. Don't jeopardize your sister's future over a jacket." But it wasn't just a jacket. It was my reputation, my livelihood, my chance, and it was always me who paid the price. So, when I stood in that bedroom in Denver years later, staring at Olivia in my wedding dress, I wasn't reacting to one stolen gown. I was standing on the rubble of 1,000 small betrayals, finally refusing to add another brick. The weeks leading up to that confrontation had been filled with quieter moments, almost deceptively normal. My fiancé, Adrian, and I were in our Austin apartment, our sofa sagging from too many late nights planning. We had just finalized the cake-tasting lavender sponge with buttercream, the one compromise we both actually loved. He leaned back, grinning, rubbing circles on my palm. 3 weeks, Luna. 3 more weeks and you'll be Mrs. Brooks." The air smelled of coffee and vanilla frosting samples. For a fleeting moment, I felt safe, cocooned in the idea that this wedding was ours. Then the doorbell rang. No text, no call. My stomach tightened before I even opened the door. That's how it always was with my parents' arrival, without warning intrusion masked as love. Adrian and I exchanged a glance before he answered. Mom swept in like a storm, her heels clacking against the hardwood. Dad followed, eyes already darting around the apartment, cataloging what he thought we'd spent on furniture. In Mom's hands was a leather-bound binder I had never seen before. She laid it on our coffee table, right over the folder of notes Adrian and I had spent weeks assembling. "We've made a few adjustments," she said sweetly, like she was announcing a surprise vacation. The binder cracked open to color-coded tabs. Flowers. Seating. Bridal party. Adrian's smile faltered. "Adjustments," he repeated, his voice careful. Mom's manicured nail tapped a page labeled bridal party. Next to my name, in perfect script, was another entry, Olivia Carter co-bride. Coordinated gown, matching jewelry. The room tilted. My pulse roared in my ears. "Co-bride," I whispered. "It's a trend," Mom insisted. "Very European." "It's not a trend," Adrian snapped before I could speak. "It's not a thing at all. This is our wedding." Dad waved a dismissive hand. "Don't be difficult, Luna. Your sister has been looking forward to this." "Looking forward to what, my wedding?" My throat burned with the words, but they stuck like barbed wire. Mom leaned closer, her perfume thick and cloying. "Can't you share just this once? You'll have the main gown." Let her feel special too. It was prom shoes all over again. The stained purse, the ruined jacket, all dressed up in bridal satin, except this time the stakes were higher. This wasn't a shoe or a bag. This was the beginning of my marriage. The line I couldn't let her cross. Adrian's hand found mine under the table, squeezing until my knuckles whitened. He didn't have to speak. The fury in his eyes mirrored my own. I closed the binder gently, deliberately, as if sealing something toxic inside. "This is not happening," I said, each word deliberate. Mom's smile cracked at the edges. Dad's jaw tightened. Olivia wasn't even there, and yet I felt her presence, a shadow stretching across my life once again. And that was only the beginning. What I didn't know then was how far they had already gone behind my back. Emails, secret fittings, even press whispers. A machine had been set in motion, and I was standing directly in its path. The night after my parents dropped that bombshell binder in our living room, I couldn't sleep. The Austin skyline shimmered outside our window, but inside me, everything was raw and unsettled. Adrian slept beside me, his breathing slow, but my mind replayed the words over and over. "We've added Olivia as co-bride." It sounded absurd, like something out of a satire. But in my family, absurdity often found a way of becoming reality. The next morning, I sat at my desk half-heartedly sorting through client lookbooks for the studio when a thought struck me, an itch I couldn't ignore. I typed wedding into my email search bar. My stomach dropped as threads appeared, dozens of them. Emails between my mother and the Santa Fe venue manager, all without me copied. I opened one. "Please prepare 2 bridal suites." Another, "ensure equal time for both sisters during the photo session." And another, "highlight both brides equally in the reception lighting." The screen blurred. My hand trembled on the mouse. It was no longer just talk. It was logistics executed behind my back. "Adrian," I whispered, my voice cracking. He came over, still bleary-eyed from coffee and deadlines, and looked at the screen. His jaw tightened, his thumb pressing hard into my shoulder. "They've been planning this without you," he said flatly. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A notification. Instagram. Olivia had posted. My heart sank as I clicked. There she was, twirling before a mirror draped in ivory satin, unmistakably my after-party dress, though altered slightly to fit her figure. The caption read, "Final fitting for my wedding look. Sister ceremony. Double the brides." The comments poured in beneath it. "Didn't know you were engaged too. Olivia, congrats. What's a sister ceremony? Sounds so cute, so modern, sharing everything with family." Each word felt like acid dripping into an open wound. The internet had already decided I was sharing before I'd ever agreed. That afternoon, my phone didn't stop ringing. Aunt Carol, who hadn't called me in 3 years, demanded, "Luna, your mother tells me you're letting Olivia join the ceremony. That's unusual, but so generous of you. No, I corrected, my voice sharp. I'm not letting her. This wasn't my idea. There was a pause, the weight of silence thick. Don't be dramatic, Aunt Carol finally said. She just wants to shine too. And then the line clicked dead. Another call, Cousin Denise. Is it really such a big deal? You're still the bride. Can't you be the bigger person I wanted to scream? Instead, I stared at the ceiling fan turning above me, its blades slicing the air like accusations. Bigger person. That was always the expectation, wasn't it? For 27 years, I had been the buffer, the peacemaker, the one who let Olivia's happiness come first. And what had it gotten me? Ruined shoes, stained bags, lost jobs, and now a stolen wedding. That evening, as I tried to drown out the noise with music, Adrian sat beside me on the couch. You know this isn't about the dress anymore, right? He said softly. This is about control. About them never letting you own anything without Olivia reaching in and taking a piece of it. I nodded, but inside I was unraveling. If my parents could turn my wedding into Olivia's playground, what part of me was left untouched? And then came the call that split everything wide open. Aunt Martha. Her voice was quieter, more cautious than the others. Luna, I need to tell you something. I overheard your parents at Christmas. They ordered Olivia's dress the same week you ordered yours. They've been planning this from the start. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. Since the beginning, yes, honey, she whispered. Your mother said it would be easier to ask forgiveness than permission. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table, feeling the wood bite into my palms. Easier to ask forgiveness. They had gambled on my silence on the wall I'd built inside myself for decades. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked. I should have, Aunt Martha admitted. I didn't want to cause trouble. But I can't watch them take this from you. Her words lingered long after the call ended. Trouble. That's what my resistance had always been labeled. Trouble. Maybe it was time to stop avoiding it. But before I could even gather myself, the phone lit up again. This time, it wasn't family. It was my boss. Luna Diana's voice was clipped professional. A client mentioned your double wedding. I don't know what's happening, but keep it out of this studio. Clients pay us for perfection, not family soap operas. I hung up, my throat burning. My private nightmare was leaking into my professional world. The walls between them were collapsing, and I had nowhere left to hide. And still, I hadn't even reached the bottom of how deep their interference ran. The next day, I drove 3 hours west, my hands locked on the steering wheel, knuckles pale against the leather. Adrian wanted to come, but I told him no. Some things I needed to face alone. The desert opened wide as I left Austin behind miles of flat horizon where the sky pressed heavy and unforgiving. By the time I reached San Diego, the sun was dipping low, painting the assisted living complex in rose gold light. Grandma Ruth's apartment was small, nothing like my parents' sprawling house. The scent of cinnamon and old books wrapped around me as soon as I stepped in, a reminder that here at least I could still breathe. She was waiting in her floral armchair, her frame frail but her eyes sharp. Luna, she said, her voice like warm tea. You look like you've been carrying boulders on your shoulders. I sank onto the couch opposite her, suddenly aware of the tightness in my chest, the way my hands wouldn't unclench. They're trying to make Olivia a co-bride. They've already emailed the venue, set up fittings, even gone on social media. Everyone thinks it's happening. Grandma's gaze didn't flicker. She reached across the small coffee table, her paper-thin hand covering mine. This is your day. No one else's. Not your sister's, not your mother's, not anyone's but yours. Her words cracked something open inside me. I hadn't realized how much I needed someone, anyone, to say out loud what I had been screaming in silence. But Grandma wasn't finished. She leaned back, sighing, her eyes drifting toward the window. You know your mother pulled something similar once. I looked up, startled. What? At her sister Louise's wedding. Your mother insisted on wearing white, demanded to stand beside the bride in photos, even carried matching flowers. When Louise objected, your grandfather sided with your mother. Louise and your mother haven't spoken in 30 years. The revelation hit me like a blow. The pattern wasn't just between Olivia and me, it stretched back generations, repeated and reinforced until it felt unbreakable. Grandma's voice softened, but her eyes never left mine. Some patterns need to be broken, Luna, and someone has to be brave enough to do it. Her words stayed with me as I drove back through the dark, the highway stretching endlessly ahead. The stars hung sharp and cold above me like pinpricks of light, daring me to claim something of my own. By the time I pulled into our apartment garage, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Missed calls from my mother, texts from my father, a flood of messages from Olivia. I ignored them all, but one notification stopped me cold, a clip from the local morning show. I opened it. There was Olivia sitting under studio lights, mascara streaking artfully down her cheeks. Her voice trembled. All I wanted was to share in my sister's special day. But she refused to let me even try on the dress. She threatened to cancel the whole wedding. The host leaned forward sympathetically. "That must have been very painful for you." Olivia dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "After everything our family has done for her, she treats me like a thief." My coffee mug slipped in my hand, hot liquid spilling across the counter. Rage and disbelief collided in my chest. They had taken the private violation and turned it into a public script, a story where I was cast as the villain before I'd had a chance to speak. Within hours, hashtags popped up online: share with sister. Cousins I hadn't seen in years texted me, "Is this true? Can't you compromise?" My phone buzzed like a hornet's nest, relentless, each vibration a reminder that silence had never protected me. It had only given them room to rewrite the story. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. My throat ached, but no tears came. Instead, one thought crystallized sharp and unyielding. If they could turn my wedding into Olivia's performance, then I needed to take back control of the stage. And I would. The question was, how far I was willing to go. The morning after Olivia's television performance, I drove back to San Diego. My hands were steady on the wheel this time, fueled not by dread, but by something harder, sharper: resolve. I needed more than words to fight this. I needed leverage. Grandma Ruth greeted me in her robe, the faint smell of lavender lotion lingering as she led me down the short hallway into her bedroom. A cedar chest sat at the foot of her bed, its surface scarred by decades of use. She pressed a key into my hand. "I've been waiting for the right time to give you this," she said. "Looks like the time has come." The hinges creaked as I lifted the lid. Inside lay bundles of old letters, faded photographs, and beneath them a thick folder. My breath caught when I saw my name printed in black ink across the front: Luna Carter. I flipped it open. The first document was a property deed. My name appeared alongside hers as co-owner of her small house in San Diego, something she had arranged on my 25th birthday without telling me. Beneath that lay the trust documents naming me executor of her estate and primary beneficiary. "I know what your parents are capable of," Grandma said quietly, her eyes locked on mine. "I've watched them hand everything to Olivia while you were left to clean up the damage. I wanted to make sure they couldn't take everything from you. These papers give you protection. They give you power." I felt the weight of the folder in my hands, heavier than paper had any right to be. Protection, power, words I'd never associated with myself when it came to my family. "Why me?" I whispered, though I already knew the answer. "Because you're the strong one," she said simply. "The one who sees clearly. But strength means nothing if you don't use it." That night back in Austin, I spread the documents across our dining table. Adrian studied them, eyebrows raised. "This changes everything," he said. "They can't use Grandma's care or inheritance as leverage anymore. You hold the cards." For the first time in weeks, I felt my lungs fill all the way to the bottom. The next day, I took another step. At the bank downtown Dallas, where my parents had insisted on funneling their wedding contribution, I sat across from Mr. Wallace, a trim man with glasses perched low on his nose. The lobby smelled faintly of disinfectant and polished wood. "These payments," I said, laying down receipts and wire confirmations, "were made under false pretenses. The funds were supposed to support my wedding with Adrian, not a spectacle starring my sister. I want them refunded into my account, effective immediately." He scanned the paperwork, lips pursed. "It all appears in order, Miss Carter. We can process this today." As the printer hummed, I felt a strange thrill ripple through me. It was more than money, it was independence. My parents had wielded finances like chains, reminding me with every decision that they were helping. Now, those chains were cut. When I walked out 20 minutes later with confirmation slips tucked safely in my purse, the sun above Dallas felt warmer, the air lighter. Still, I knew money alone wouldn't stop them. My family's greatest weapon had always been access, slipping into places uninvited, whispering into ears, until their version of the story became the only one anyone remembered. If I wanted to secure my wedding, I needed walls they couldn't breach. That's when I called Naomi Rivera. She wasn't part of my mother's social circle, which was exactly why I wanted her. Her office in downtown Austin was filled with photographs of unique weddings, desert ceremonies under lanterns, mountaintop vows with hiking boots hidden beneath lace gowns. Not one picture featured matching sisters in white. "Tell me what you want," Naomi said, leaning forward, her voice brisk but not unkind. No one had asked me that before. The words came out before I could stop them. "Security," I said. "Real security. Guards at the venue, enforcement of the guest list. People who won't flinch if my family tries to push through." She didn't blink. "We can arrange that." By the time I left her office contracts signed, I felt as though I'd built the first wall of my fortress. But walls can't stand without locks. Adrian called his college roommate Connor Hayes, now an IT security consultant. Connor arrived with a laptop and a grin, his presence a reminder that not everyone in my life wanted to tear me down. "Your family's sneaky?" he asked, fingers already flying over the keyboard. "Then we'll be sneakier." He reset every password tied to our wedding account's venue, photographer, caterer. He added two-factor authentication, rerouted communications, so any requests had to come directly from me or Adrian. "Now," he said, leaning back, "if your mom tries to book a second bridal suite, she'll hit a brick wall." For the first time, I laughed. It came out jagged, half-broken, but real. Once Connor left, I sat in the quiet of our apartment, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. For weeks, I'd been on defense, swatting away each new intrusion. But now, I had walls locks leverage. It was time to flip the script. I opened my laptop and scrolled through the gallery I'd been building in secret. The prom shoes snapped in half, the stained coach tote, the stretched-out sweater, the custom jacket ruined with red wine. Proof of every theft, every careless swipe Olivia had taken from me. At the end of the collection, I added the newest photos, her in my after-party dress, my grandmother's sapphire earrings dangling from her ears. I uploaded the post with trembling fingers. Caption: "A bride deserves respect." By noon the next day, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Likes, comments, messages from colleagues. The hashtag #ToUrBrideNotBullied was already trending in Austin. An influencer I had once styled reposted it to her 2 million followers. "Protect your peace, protect your day." Vendors began chiming in, publicly promising they would only take instructions from me, the actual bride. At work, my boss Diana walked past my desk, glanced at my computer screen, and said simply, "About time," before moving on. For once, the tide had turned, but I knew social media storms passed quickly. If I wanted real control, I needed something undeniable, proof Olivia couldn't wriggle away from. That's when I set the trap. I called her that evening, my voice syrupy sweet. "Hey, Olivia. I've been thinking, maybe we rushed things. Maybe you should try the after-party dress one more time for proper measurements." There was a pause, then a delighted squeal. "Really? I knew you'd come around. Mom said you'd see reason." When she arrived the next day, Mom hovering at her side like a general marching her favorite soldier, I had the dress laid out, steamed and perfect. Olivia slipped into it eagerly, twirling in front of the mirror like a child at a costume party. "You look stunning," Mom said, her voice dripping with triumph. I lifted my phone. "Smile," I murmured, snapping photo after photo as Olivia posed, dramatically sapphire earrings catching the light. "These will be treasured forever," Mom said, patting my arm. "Yes," I answered, smiling tightly. "They will." As they fussed over shoe options and lipstick shades, I stepped into the hallway and hit send. The photos sailed into a carefully drafted email addressed to the venue manager, photographer, and planner, Naomi. Attached was the entire gallery of evidence labeled and time-stamped. My note was short, deliberate. This is my wedding. Any attempt to present a second bride is fraud. Consider this official notice. The whoosh of the email leaving my phone felt like an exhale I'd been holding for years. But I wasn't done. That evening, while Olivia was distracted at a hair appointment, I emptied my closet of every wedding item, the gown, the after-party dress, the sapphire earrings, and drove them straight to San Diego. Grandma Ruth watched as I carried the box into her living room, setting it gently beside her cedar chest. "They'll be livid," she warned, though there was a spark of pride in her eyes. "Let them be," I said, placing the earrings into their velvet case. These were never hers to begin with. On the drive back, the night air whipped through my cracked window, cool and bracing. For the first time in months, I felt unshackled. They could scream, they could scheme, they could even cry on television again, but the dress and the earrings were mine, safe, untouchable. Still, I knew the storm wasn't over. My family had always thrived on escalation. They wouldn't go quietly, not when they believed they had a right to everything I owned. But this time, I wasn't waiting to be blindsided. This time, I was ready for war. The morning of my wedding dawned sharp and cold over Santa Fe. The adobe walls of the venue glowed peach in the early sun, and the air smelled faintly of mesquite smoke drifting from nearby chimneys. I arrived 3 hours before the ceremony veil, tucked carefully into a garment bag, the box with my grandmother's earrings clutched like armor against my chest. Through the glass entry doors, I saw chaos already brewing. My mother stood at the front desk, gesturing wildly with one manicured hand, while my father waved a copy of the contract in the air like a weapon. Behind them, Olivia hovered in a white dress that looked suspiciously similar to mine, her lips pressed into a determined smile. We had an understanding. My mother's voice carried sharp enough to slice through the lobby. "A sister ceremony. It's a family tradition." The venue coordinator looked pale, caught in the storm. "Ma'am, there's nothing in our paperwork about 2 brides." It was a verbal agreement. My father blustered, his face reddening. "If you don't honor it, we'll pursue legal action for breach of contract." I tightened my grip on Adrian's hand. Beside us, Connor and the security team we'd hired in dark suits shifted subtly ready. My pulse beat steady this time, not frantic, not panicked. "Just steady." "Ready," Adrian whispered. More than ever, I said, and pushed the door open. The lobby went silent. My mother's face drained of color. Olivia's mouth formed a perfect O of surprise. They had expected me to arrive later, giving them time to twist the venue into submission. The coordinator rushed toward me, relief plain on her face. "Miss Carter, thank goodness. Perhaps you can clarify." I raised my voice, making sure every worker in the room could hear. "There is no sister ceremony. My parents and sister are confused. This is my wedding, mine and Adrian's. There will be one bride and she's standing here." Gasps rippled through the staff. My father's jaw clenched. My mother sputtered. Olivia clutched her bouquet tighter, her knuckles white against the stems. I turned to Connor. "Please ensure my family stays in the designated area until the ceremony. They are not authorized to make changes to any arrangements." Connor gave a crisp nod. The sight of my parents being gently but firmly redirected was a small victory, but one that tasted sweeter than any cake. Hours later, as the guests filled the courtyard, music swelled from the string quartet. I stood in the bridal suite, my main gown cascading around me in waves of lace, my grandmother's sapphire earrings cool against my neck. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from certainty. Grandma Ruth appeared at my side, her eyes bright, though her steps were slow. "You look magnificent," she said, securing the veil with the vintage pearl pin she'd saved just for me. Strong. When the doors opened, I didn't take my father's arm. Instead, I slipped my hand into Ruth's. Gasps rose from the crowd as she guided me down the aisle, but I held my head high. The officiant's voice rang clear, each word deliberate. "Today, we gather to witness the union of Luna Carter and Adrian Brooks, only." She emphasized the last word, letting it settle like a stone in still water. From the front row, my parents sat stiff and silent, their smiles brittle. Olivia fidgeted with her gown, tugging at fake diamond earrings that seemed pitiful against the sparkle of mine. And when Adrian's eyes found mine, the rest of the world blurred into nothing. The ceremony passed like a dream, but the reception was where the real test began. By the time Adrian and I entered the ballroom, laughter and the clink of glasses filled the air. The chandeliers threw fractured light across the floor, catching on the satin of my after-party dress, the same one Olivia had once paraded in and on the sapphire earrings that dangled like blue fire at my neck. The symmetry of it struck me. Months earlier, those earrings had burned in my palm, cold and stolen. Tonight, they gleamed in plain sight, exactly where they belonged. I lifted my champagne flute. To those who truly support us and respect our boundaries, I said, raising my glass toward Adrian, Grandma Ruth, and Jessica, my maid of honor. Notably absent the front family table where my parents sat, smiles tight, Olivia sulking at their side. The room erupted in applause, glasses chiming. For the first time, the spotlight was mine, not shared, not stolen, not negotiated. But Olivia never knew how to sit quietly. 20 minutes later, I caught sight of her edging toward the DJ booth bouquet, clutched like a weapon. My mother was on her heels, whispering urgently to the wedding planner, who shook her head firmly. "Special sister toast," I heard my mother insist. "It's traditional." Before Olivia could grab the microphone, Connor intercepted, towering over her with a practiced smile. "The bride's playlist is quite specific," he said smoothly, steering her away from the booth. I crossed the dance floor, the train of my gown brushing the polished wood. Stopping directly in front of my sister, I lowered my voice so only she could hear. "Not today," I said. "Not ever again." For once, Olivia's bravado cracked. Her eyes widened, confusion flickering where arrogance had always lived. Later, near the cake table, my father cornered me. His face was red, his voice low, but laced with fury. "We need to talk. Now." I followed him into a small side room, my mother already waiting inside, tears glistening on her cheeks like stage makeup. "You've humiliated us in front of everyone we know," my father hissed. "You'll regret this display," my mother added, dabbing her eyes. "After all we've done for you, the sacrifices, the support." For a moment, I simply studied them. My father's authority that crumbled when challenged. My mother's tears summoned and dismissed like props. Then I reached up and straightened my earrings. The tiny gesture felt louder than any shout. "Thank you," I said finally. They both blinked. "For what?" my mother asked cautiously. "For showing me exactly who you are. Now I know exactly who I need to be." My father stepped forward, hand twitching as though he could still pull me back into orbit. "If you walk out that door—" "You'll what?" I interrupted, my voice steady. "Take my car, my inheritance, my wedding dress. You've been taking pieces of me my entire life. There's nothing left for you to claim." I opened the door, pausing just long enough to look over my shoulder. "Enjoy the cake." I picked chocolate because it's the only flavor Olivia hates. Then I walked back into the music, the laughter, the glow of a celebration that was finally mine. Adrian met me on the dance floor, pulling me close. As we swayed to our song, I glanced past his shoulder at Grandma Ruth, laughing with his parents, her diamonds catching the chandelier light like tiny shields. Some jewelry isn't just decoration. Sometimes it's armor. 6 months after the wedding, autumn swept across Portland, Maine, the maples outside our bay window burning gold and crimson. I stood at the glass with a mug of coffee, watching leaves spiral to the ground, their descent slow and final. For the first time in years, I could breathe without bracing for intrusion. No surprise visits, no binder full of stolen decisions, no one barging into my life uninvited. Behind me, Adrian padded across the hardwood in weekend socks, his hair still mussed from sleep. "More coffee?" he asked. "Please?" I said, curling my fingers tighter around the warm ceramic. He poured, then joined me at the window seat, the quiet wrapping around us like a quilt. "Your mother called again yesterday," he said gently. "I know." "You're not going to call her back." I took a slow sip, letting the heat steady me. "Next week, on my terms. If they push, the conversation ends." Adrian studied me for a moment, then kissed my temple. I'm proud of you. I looked out at the yard again, the trees shedding what they no longer needed. I can breathe here, I whispered. The truth of it still astonished me. That afternoon, Grandma Ruth's silver Buick pulled into our driveway. Moving her into a senior community just 10 minutes away had been one of the best decisions we'd made after the wedding. She shuffled into our kitchen, lowering herself into a chair as I brewed tea. Her hands shook slightly, but her eyes remained sharp. I finalized everything with the lawyers, she said, sliding a folder across the table. You're the executor now, and the primary beneficiary. The papers blurred as tears pricked my eyes. Grandma, you don't have to. You were the only one who saw them for what they were, she interrupted. Her weathered hand covered mine. This family has a pattern. She opened an old photo album I had never seen. Page after page revealed women bending themselves smaller. My mother as a child always stepping aside for her sister. My grandmother as a young woman surrendering her college fund so her brother could expand his business. And now, me for 27 years making peace by giving pieces of myself away. 4 generations of doormats, she said with surprising frankness. Then she shut the book with a snap. Until you. Her words rang in my chest long after she left. 2 weeks later, I stood in my new styling studio in downtown Boston arranging copies of a magazine that featured my wedding day look on the reception counter. The cover headline read, Boundary Setting Bride Style, Why Saying No Became Fashion's New Yes. My phone buzzed with another client booking this one a television actress who had seen the spread and wanted to work with me. The studio smelled of fresh paint and leather upholstery. Light spilled through tall windows onto racks of curated gowns, each tagged with my name. For once, my career wasn't something fragile Olivia could stain or steal. It was mine, built from the ashes of a wedding they tried to sabotage. That afternoon, a package arrived. No return address, but the handwriting on the label was my mother's. Inside lay my childhood diary, its purple cover faded, the lock broken. Flipping through the pages, I found lists I had made at 13, the sweater Olivia never returned, the shoes she scuffed, the necklace she borrowed and lost. A folded note fell out. 4 words written in my mother's careful script. Perhaps we should have listened. It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement. Something I had never been given before. I placed the diary on a bookshelf in my office, visible but not central. A chapter closed, but not erased. Thanksgiving arrived with the scent of rosemary and roasted turkey filling our Portland home. The dining table stretched to its limit, ringed with people who had stood by me through the storm. Adrian, Grandma Ruth, Jessica, Connor, Naomi, and a handful of friends who had become family. Samantha arranged flowers in a low glass vase, her laughter spilling across the room, while Adrian carved the turkey steam, rising in fragrant curls. The door to my study was ajar, my phone buzzing faintly on the desk. I glanced at the caller ID, my parents. I didn't move. Do you need to get that, Grandma asked, her voice calm, knowing. Tomorrow, I said, sliding the door shut. Today is for Joy. She nodded, eyes gleaming with approval. As we gathered around the table, Adrian lifted his glass. To chosen family, he said, looking around the circle. And to peace we fought for. Glasses clinked. I raised mine, the sapphire earrings at my ears catching the candlelight. They felt heavier tonight, not with burden, but with meaning. Armor transformed into adornment. We passed dishes, stories tumbling over one another, laughter louder than the storm outside, rattling against the windows. For once, there were no undercurrents, no landmines disguised as conversation. Just warmth, uncomplicated and whole. Later, as the night wound down and plates were cleared, I stepped onto the porch alone. The air was sharp, laced with the salt of the nearby ocean. Above the sky was a scatter of stars. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. My parents, insistent as ever. I silenced it without hesitation. I thought about the generations before me, women who had yielded, compromised, swallowed their voices until nothing remained but bitterness. My grandmother surrendering her dreams. My mother stealing her sister's spotlight. Me for years playing the bigger person while Olivia played the star. But not anymore. Some things are worth sharing. Laughter food. Love a home filled with warmth. Some things are worth keeping heirlooms memories, promises whispered under candlelight. And some things, like your self-respect, should never be given away. Inside, Adrian called my name. I turned the light from our kitchen, spilling golden across the porch. Grandma Ruth sat by the fire, her profile etched in the glow, her smile soft but proud. Jessica was pouring more wine. Connor cracking another joke, Naomi jotting notes for her next event. My people. My family. I touched the earrings cool against my skin and felt the weight of them settle into something permanent, not just jewelry, not just inheritance, but proof that I had finally stepped out from behind shadows. I walked back inside, letting the door shut firmly behind me. The phone stopped ringing. Tomorrow would come soon enough. Tonight, I was free. If this story struck a chord with you, don't just walk away. Let me know. Drop a comment sharing where you're watching from, or tell me about a time you finally said enough. Hit that like button if you believe every person deserves the right to draw their own boundaries, and subscribe so you don't miss the next story of betrayal, resilience, and reclaiming what's yours. Trust me, what comes next is even harder to believe.